Hi, I'm Charasanan Holasutsagun. I'm a manager of the Banking and Financial Services Division at Robert Walters Thailand. And today I'm your host for this episode of our Talent Talks with Robert Walters. This episode is part of our leadership interview series where business leaders, recruitment experts, and career growth specialists share their insights on career, leadership lessons, and the latest talent trends. Today, I'm very honored to have Kun Arapat Sangkharat, Acting CEO and Regional Head of Transformation of Maybank Kim Eng, joining with us. Welcome, Kun Arapat, and thank you very much for making time for us.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Okay, so let's get started. So firstly, congrats, Kun Arapat, on recently taking on the role of Acting CEO of Maybank Kim Eng. Looking at your career history, Kun Arapat, your career spans over 19 years in banking and consulting, in brand name banks and consulting firms across Asia and the US. From starting off as a credit risk analyst at Citibank in 1997 to today, where you have been recently appointed as acting CEO, what has been the most memorable part of your career journey so far?
Well, in my career, it's been over 20 years, and I spent the first 8 years in Asia working here. But then I moved to the US. I was there for 10 years, but I think the most memorable part had to be my journey back to the US. I mean, it was memorable because it was truly humbling. You know, I've always done pretty well since I came out of school. Didn't have to give my 100% effort to do really well. But I think when I moved to the US, the competition was a lot tougher and the standards were a lot higher. I worked for people that I felt were actually smarter than me, and people work for me who are more talented. So, you know, it took me many over years really to work really hard to catch up to everyone and get back to where I thought I could be. And of course, a couple of years later, I got promoted to senior manager when I was in consulting. So that was really, you know, the humbling experience was probably the most memorable. And having to felt like I fell and I got back up, and then I kept moving. And so that was probably the most memorable part.
Okay. That's thank you very much for sharing. That's very interesting and insightful career. And for the sake of our listeners and viewers, can you tell us a little bit more about what you do as acting CEO and regional head of transformation at Maybank Kim Eng currently, and what does the transformation involved?
Okay. Well, I think, you know, I thought about that a lot too. What did I do all day, you know, every day of the week? And most of the time it's sort of trying to keep track of what I'm actually doing and how I am effectively helping to push the company forward. But I think, you know, I listen to a lot of podcasts too, and then watch a lot of YouTube, especially you know, icons in industry. And I think, you know, Steve Jobs, there was an interview that Steve Jobs said, you know, described his days at work. He said, pretty much that most days are about just having a bunch of meetings, collaborating with a bunch of people, and really solving problems and work with different teams. And really, you know, when I look at what I do every day, that's how it is. I mean, it's minus the surprises that happen throughout the day, but for the most part, that's what I do. I'm a pretty hands-on person. I think as a leader of a company, you can't be, you know, at 100,000 foot level the whole time. You have to work with the people around you, inspire them, guide them in the right direction. So a lot of it's really collaborating, you know, co-creating, solving problems together.
Okay.
I think your second part of the question you asked about transformation, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Well, transformation, it's not an easy thing to do because, I mean, by definition, transformation is making change. And transformation means they're making drastic changes, actually. So work itself is really hard. So I think the transformation, or the way I think about it, it's almost being thrown in a maze and having to find a way out. You know, transformation, there's no start, here's a start line, here's a finish line. It really is a maze. And so a lot of it's about thinking what I need to do, but also doing it. So it's both thinking strategically and executing the work. But in short, really, transformation is different than just doing small change management project, because you're making massive changes across the organization in terms of org structure, could be in terms of strategy, in terms of your operation, technology, and the people. It's all connected. And so doing all of it at the same time, that's what transformation is all about. But there's no set order to doing things. Yeah. What you do in one area will impact the other. So that's really transformation. It's fairly complex, but there are ways to do it. I mean, there's a madness to how it's done. Yeah. Order to how it's done. I'm sorry.
Okay. And have you always known that you wanted to do organizational transformation? And how does someone end up with a role in transformation?
No, actually, I actually wanted to be in academic. I wanted to be a college professor.
Oh, really? Never heard of.
Exactly.
Okay.
I do like teaching a lot, but I think in terms of transformation, it's naturally I gravitate towards transformation over time. I mean, I've always been a person who sees things and always look at things that it can be improved. And that's sort of something that's a DNA of anyone in transformation anyways. Yes, things are either cups either half full or half empty, but at the end of the day, it's half, right? So there's always a way to figure out how to do it better. And so, so I gravitate towards doing transformational work in consulting, which requires me to work across different areas in the company. And over time, it sort of became what I do, which is connect the different parts of the organization together to make sure that the strategy is coherent with the ways being executed in the operations, technology, et cetera. So it just came, by chance, really.
And I heard many times that most of the professional who are in the transformation or strategy or consulting areas, you need to have the curiosity as well. So that is, do you think that is like one of the qualities that is like really essential to this role?
Absolutely. I mean, it's intellectual curiosity is the starting point to begin the journey in a sense. I mean, when we look at it, we always have to find out what can be done, what can we do better? If we do better, what are we getting out of it? And so that desire to learn more, to understand the problem, or even to identify a problem, that has to be there.
Okay. And that's really leading to our next questions as well, that you have started your career during the midst of the financial crisis, Asian financial crisis in 1997. And now you have taken your new role as an acting CEO during like the COVID-19 pandemic, which is rages around the world. And how are you and your teams seeking to tackle the current pandemic crisis? And are there any organizational and personal actions to be taken or learned during such crisis?
Well, to be honest, I came 2-3 months into the crisis already when I arrived here at Maybank. But I think it's similar to many organizations. Many companies have BCP, business continuity planning. But when it comes to real crisis, that's really the moment of truth. I mean, what do you do then? So it's all about having hopefully a command center to orchestrate the BCP plan. But also, I think something I've learned throughout the whole process that just like any planning, there are always going to be planning are always incomplete. There will always be a white space, a void in the way we plan it out. So having that command center to prioritize, to identify, to solve the problems on a daily basis, and to execute very quickly is very important. But that's sort of blocking and tackling of managing any crisis. But I think with this crisis in particular, the people aspect of it is really the most critical part, because we're talking about impact of people's not only livelihood but lives. So in a way, this one's very different. So I think in the process of planning, executing, people have to be sort of top of the priority list. Whatever we do is not about ensuring business continuity, but it's ensuring that our staff, our employees are safe. That was the number one priority what we did. And I think that in a way, this is a little bit different than other crises. And in putting people at the forefront of it, we had to change a lot of our BCP as well, how we tackle it. Yeah. But that's during the beginning phase of the COVID crisis. And I think, we're a year into it, and here's another wave of COVID once again. So the next phase we're trying to do is to look beyond the crisis. Well, how post-crisis, post-lockdown, whenever that's going to end, I mean, how will our business be impacted? How will our people be impacted? How will our customers be impacted? So a lot of work has to be done. It's an ongoing thing. It's not just one day and we just go on a BAU process. It's continuously changing.
Okay, thank you so much. And beyond tackling the COVID-19 pandemic and resulting challenges, what other major trends do you currently see or foresee in banking and financial services sector, and how are you preparing Maybank Kim Eng for the success in this new world of the new normal?
So the question around, where do we see, future from financial services? It's been the same question for many, many years, even before the crisis hit. But I mean, most would agree that when COVID hit and we still are in it, this lockdown, countrywide lockdown, global lockdown, really. I mean, that has really changed people's behavior. I mean, we talk about COVID, really, it's the part where it helped digitize the entire industry. Because customers haven't really transitioned to digital. A lot of them have not. And so with COVID here, things are very different now. So the way we engage customers is different today, but even post-pandemic, post-lockdown, it will also be different because people have been in this lockdown mode. Things are not face-to-face. They're more digitally savvy. They've been doing it for over a year. So it's going to be a very different way to engage with customers. And also with we see in the US already, we look at investment, for example, it's just very narrowly investment in the space. I mean, we see the rise of retail investors, but pulling their ideas together, right? So it's the same happening here as well. I mean, with people being home, they're looking at ways to, I guess, make more money, for instance. And so banking or investing from home is now a lot more, a lot more important part of how they invest.
Okay. And do you also think, like, what is the skill set that you think banking and financial services professional would need to succeed after this new normal and pandemic crisis?
So I think the skill sets, they have to be more flexible. I think banking have evolved over time, obviously, but I think over the last 10 years, especially in Asia, even in the US, it's a lot more digital. That's one thing. So as I mentioned earlier, the way customers be engaged and interact with banks were very different before. And so I think the same formula to get things done will not work. And so I think leaders will have to really embrace change. They have to recognize that the role is not to maintain the status quo. And I think with a lot of leaders and organization, you can't always teach us or old dog new tricks, right? They always say, well, a lot of things are going on are actually new. So embracing the change and knowing as well that the key to figuring out the answer to how you want to move forward is really about collaborating and getting more out of your organization, pulling the ideas together. So not all ideas will come from the management level. Some ideas will come from all the newbies joining the company. So it's really about working together more. And we really have to look at outside of banking. I mean, all the industries are being blurred anyways. I mean, that's very clear. So having banking knowledge just on its own without diversity in the way of thinking and knowledge, it's not going to help.
Okay, so being flexible and also in terms of leadership, you need to have collaborations and open to ideas from the newer staff as well.
Right, and I think I would add one more too.
Yep.
One of my favorite quote I often use even internally in our presentation on board is that there was one from Socrates, and then we talk about, I remember it, that the secret to change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but building the new. And I think that says, I mean, that's very telling. Sometimes a mindset that leaders will have to have. You can't always look back in the past. You learn from the past, but it's time to embrace that things will have to change. And you really have to be the one to lead the way and get them motivate and inspire the rest of the organization to really move to the new and not focus on the old. And that's harder to do than, it's easier said than done. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so the recent polls from CNBC to Forbes all showed a sizable number of people across the world quitting or getting ready to leave their jobs in the coming days. And in the financial sector, a recent global Bloomberg News reported that even a 30% pay rise cannot stop junior bankers from leaving to join in fintech and investment firms, especially in Asia. Do you see that this is happening in your part of the world? And how are you and your team approaching this issue of retaining talent, especially in this new normal?
Well, I think, yes, the answer is simply yes. I mean, obviously, it's harder to attract talent these days to financial services, much like in the US. I mean, the question here is, we have to ask is, why are they leaving, or why are they preferring to go to fintechs or startups? And I don't think it's only because of the chance to make millions or billions, because really, only less than 1% of startups will make it anyways. But I think what I've seen is that many younger, new gen millennials, they're also looking to do something more meaningful, and they don't want to get caught up in red tapes and bureaucracies within a large organization, and they want to be with like-minded people, people with a lot more energy, people their age too. So I think that in a way, that's being, so startups and fintechs and et cetera seems more attractive. But I think from corporate standpoint, I mean, we have to recognize that you just throw money at them, it's just going to last. It won't be permanent anyways. I mean, it's just a temporary fix, it's a sweetener. So, if people want to be inspired, they want to do more meaningful things, then really we have to ask ourselves, I mean, what are we doing today? I mean, is the objective of our company just to make more money? How do we inspire people to stay with us? And I think, even I also, again, watch a lot of, read a lot and watch a lot of stories about Elon Musk, and he talks SpaceX in this case. If you look at it, he's not just trying to send rockets just for the sake of sending rockets up in space, but his overall vision is about interplanetary species. And that's where he wants. So, I mean, that's very inspiring. So sometimes I look at I ask my team and ask them, what are we actually trying to do here? What, are we just trying to make money? Is that it, or something else? So I think a lot of times, being in a company, bigger company that's not a startup, it already is a unicorn in a way, and that if we just transform ourselves to have more meaningful, become more meaningful, to have more purposeful, more to what we're doing. And then, of course, have an environment where it's not so bureaucratic, where it's more open, where we can work together, work more collaborative, and it can be done. I've seen it before. When I was in the US for many years, big firms, there are more collaborative than many small firms in Asia. So obviously it is doable, but again, this sort of thing needs to be led from the top as well.
Okay, so creating environment and also like meaningful purposes of the business.
Right. Just beyond P&L.
Okay, that's very great. So, and when it comes to hiring, what areas are Maybank Kim Eng that is looking to hire for in the market? And do you personally look for potential hires and when promoting talent?
Yeah, so we're always hiring. I do a lot of hiring even before I arrive here at Maybank Kim Eng. I have really simple requirements. Number one is smart. I don't need rocket scientists, but I do need to be smart, meaning that I tend to look at people that I call them clean sheet thinker, They're more structured, but they can work with a lot of ambiguity. The reason that's very important is because things are changing the market. I mean, a lot of things, business models are being revamped on a yearly basis, for example. So it's not that you have one idea that can run for the next 10, 20 years anymore. It doesn't work. So smart people, clean sheet thinkers, very important. I think the second one, obviously, is some people with similar DNA to the kind of people in the build, which is, being hardworking, diligent is very important. Still is, will always will be. But they have to be driven to do something more meaningful. I keep using that word because it's not about money only. Money will always come, but it's the people who actually want to do something. They have passion. They're very passionate about that, and so passion will always keep people working, and they will always enjoy it. In a way that leads into a third one, which is people that take pride in their work. People who take pride in their work are usually people who are doing something that's meaningful to them or meaningful. So that's critical. And I think the last one really is that I often look for people who tend to do a lot of self-reflection. They have to know who they are and what they have yet to achieve, and really what they're good at and not good at. I think that's really important because no one's perfect. And when people do a lot of self-reflection, it means that likely that they will continue to improve over time. Because they're always going to, they're honest about themselves, where the gaps are, where it can improve. They're always going to work at that. And so over time, that's kind of people want to keep long-term because they'll keep evolving and becoming a better and better, knowledge thinker, worker, colleague, and etc.
Okay. So for you, this first is to always be smart, also passionate, and self-reflection, which will always make them improve and evolve in themselves. Okay, so now we're coming down to the last two questions. Looking back, and do you think your personal branding is important in one's career? And how have you branded yourself throughout your career?
Very important, and the answer is I didn't really for so many years, for decades I didn't do it. Even though my mentor told me that when I moved to US, said, "What's your branding, Arapat?" And I couldn't answer it. And then instead of working at building a branding, I still didn't do it after many years. But it is very important. But that was the thing I did before. I just didn't have any branding until he had to help me. So it wasn't really until I moved back to Asia second time around, which was 7 years ago, that I recognized that maybe it's time since I'm starting over, it's time for me to build my branding. And so I started working harder at it. And to make sure that I have when people ask, what am I known for? I have that, I guess, famous factor. So it is very important. If I had done it earlier, it would have been helpful for my career and everything else too. But to be honest, I didn't.
Okay. Do you have an answer to the question now? Like, how have you branded yourself? I mean, like, probably like throughout the past, like previously. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So so on this, when I moved back here, moved back to Thailand, obviously, and transformation was the sort of what everyone was talking about at that time. But obviously, transformation soon evolved into digital transformation, and I do a lot of that too. I do a lot of business strategy, process improvement, organizational redesign. All of it is really part of transformation. So that's where I went with it. I want to be known in the digital transformation space. So I did try to build that brand, not only within in the firm I was working for, but of course actively in the market, going speakers at events and etc. So after a while, that's what I became known for. But it didn't happen overnight. Yeah.
Okay, and that's actually something that you're really known for, like digital transformation, and then that's why I think that is one of the major contributions to your success. And also as a regional head of transformation, of course, it doesn't come overnight, but I think that is a very successful branding so far that you have done to yourself. Okay, and I think now we have come to the last questions, like what key work and life lessons have you learned over the course of your career, and what has been the key to your own success leading to where you are today?
Okay, I think the biggest lesson learned has to be a passion over money. I wasn't always like that when I first started my career. I picked to go in financial services because it was paying the best at that time. But really, it wasn't really my passion to be a banker. And I
Okay.
think, to be honest, that was a mistake. Whenever any one of us work on something or do you think you're passionate about something, you want to you can work on it 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. You still will be okay. You won't be tired. You still will be you're driven by passion. And so I always say it doesn't matter what the money is. If you're doing something you like, eventually the money will come. If you really want the money will come. So that was sort of the first thing that I've learned. So these days, I'm stuck in financial services and I'm okay with it now. But again, my passion is to do something more meaningful too, not just being in a company, right? So that's what I'm doing now. So I'm working on something a little more passionate for Maybank Kim Eng. Part of it is to democratize investing. I think that's a big deal. It's our social responsibility to make sure that people from in a mass with lower income have an opportunity to build build their wealth as well. So it's a lot more meaningful. I think the second one too is that, and I alluded to earlier, self-reflection. I mean, I look at myself a lot too, where what I can do to improve. I mean, I try to be honest by myself. I learn from people around me, people who are better than me in certain things. And I always say I always say that people tend to overestimate their abilities. So it's important to do a lot of self-reflection. And I think the last thing I can think of would be that take chances and just adjust accordingly. It's a long career, and if you don't take chances, then you really won't know what you like, what you enjoy, and what makes you really tick in a way, right? So I have taken a fair amount of chances the last few years, more so than before, and some worked out well, some didn't, but it's still very great learning experience and makes my overall career more fulfilling.
Okay. Thank you so much, Arapat. I think that is very good advice to our listeners. And so the key lessons would be passion over money, self-reflection, and take the chances. So thank you so much, Arapat. And I think we have come to the end of our interview today. And thank you for taking the time to do this interview with us. And it was a very insightful session. And I'm sure we have gained many takeaways on growing, excelling, and transforming ourselves and our organization. So thank you so much. And to our listeners and viewers, stay tuned for the next episode of our Robert Walters Talent Talk. And goodbye.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.